First story. My boyfriend's son gets bullied at school for his stutter and his dead mom. I allowed it. Now he defended himself from the bully, so I grounded him, took away his PS5, and gave it to his bully, and forced an apology to his bully and their mom as punishment. Then I mistakenly told my husband his son should have gone in the accident along with his mom. Now I'm regretting my actions. I 28F moved in with my boyfriend 30M about a year ago. He's a single dad with 2 kids, Liam 9M and Maya 6F. Their mom died 3 years ago in a car crash. And yes, Liam was in the car when it happened. He survived, but it's been a whole thing since then. Therapy, nightmares, mood swings, and apparently he still can't sleep most nights. When I moved in, I wasn't trying to be their mom. But it just sort of happened that way. I was the one getting Maya ready for school. I cooked. I cleaned. I handled pickup when Liam had a meltdown at school again and Daniel couldn't leave work. I quit my part-time job to be around more. Nobody told me to, but someone had to be the adult. And yes, I stepped up. Whether they admit it or not, I became the glue holding the day-to-day together. But here's the thing. Liam is hard to live with. He's clingy. He interrupts every conversation. He whines if he thinks someone got more attention than him, even his little sister. He's constantly too anxious to do basic things like clean his room or talk to his teacher. Anytime something doesn't go his way, he plays the trauma card and Daniel falls for it every single time. I tried. I did the whole patient thing. I listened. I sat through those therapy appointments, even when they made no sense. But you try living with a kid who bursts into tears when you ask him to put away a bowl and tells you you're not his real mom whenever he gets upset. Then, when he wants something, suddenly I'm like a mom and should help make daddy say yes. It's like walking into a minefield every single day. There's always something. A kid didn't want to sit next to him at lunch. A teacher didn't pick him for a project. The neighbor's dog barked too loudly. And everything turns into a long dramatic story about how he can't handle it, and everything reminds him of the crash. Daniel eats it up, and I'm the cold one if I so much as raise an eyebrow. There's one kid at school, Braden, who Liam says has been bullying him for months. I've heard all the stories how Braden makes fun of him for not having a mum, and how he mimics him when he stutters or freaks out. And maybe that happened. But it's always Liam's version of events. Always. Every parent-teacher meeting has turned into a he said, she said circus because Braden's parents say Liam is lying to get sympathy. And their son would never say those things. I've started to believe them. Because I've seen Liam twist things. Just last month, Daniel got a call from the school because Liam told a teacher I hit him. It was just a smack on the head. He cried. That was it. He admitted later that he was just really upset that day and didn't mean to say it that way. But the damage was done. I didn't even get an apology from Daniel, just silence and more walking on eggshells. So when Daniel managed to pre-order a PS5, it was honestly the first good moment in the house in a while. He and Liam were both excited, bonding over it. But I saw it coming the minute Liam took it to school as gossip. It was going to blow up. That Friday, I'm finally having a moment to myself when Daniel calls me from work. He's got that tired tone he uses when Liam's gotten into something again. Apparently, Liam bragged in class about having the PS5 on day 1, and Braden started crying. The teacher got involved. Parents were notified. And now Braden's mom is furious. Now, I get it. Maybe Liam just snapped a little. But if you've spent 5 minutes around him, you'd know he always finds a way to twist pain into a weapon. He knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted Braden to feel small. For once, he had the upper hand and rubbed it in his face. He was probably proud of it. Later that day, Braden's mom Jessica calls Daniel directly. She's upset. She says her kid came home in tears, humiliated. She says Liam shouldn't be rewarded with a console after hurting her son's feelings. She wants us to give them the PS5 instead. Says it's the only way Liam will understand there are consequences. I agreed with her. I know that'll sound cruel to some of you. But when a kid acts out, even if they're hurting, there has to be a line. Liam has never faced a real consequence in 3 years. Every time, it's chalked up to grief or trauma or anxiety. But when you use your pain to tear someone else down, and you get away with it, what are we teaching him? I told Daniel that night that maybe she was right. Maybe the best thing would be to let the other family have it. We can always get another one later. Liam would survive. It's not like he doesn't have enough: an iPad, a Switch, his own TV. But Daniel looked at me like I was crazy. He said punishing Liam that harshly over one comment was insane. We got into a fight again. Same old loop. He says I don't understand what Liam's going through. I say Liam isn't the only one in the house who deserves peace. I asked him when the last time was that I had a full day without some drama or emotional outburst in my own home. He didn't answer. Then Jessica said something about his wife over the phone that Daniel didn't take well. He lost it, cursed her out, and hung up. And that just shut the whole thing down. No more discussion. He shut himself in the bedroom. I could hear him pacing, muttering under his breath. Didn't talk to me the rest of the night. The next morning, it's like none of it happened. He's making pancakes, being cheerful with the kids, and acting like Jessica never called, like the PS5 thing wasn't a big deal. Liam gets up, sees everyone acting normal, and just slides right back into his routine like he didn't make a kid cry at school 2 days ago. I stood there watching it, realizing I was the only one who still cared about what happened. I tried bringing it up again that night after the kids were in bed. Told Daniel that he keeps brushing things under the rug, and that Liam's just learning that someone else will clean up after him. He snapped. Said I had no idea what it's like to raise a kid who wakes up screaming some nights. Said I only see the bad parts. That I never bother to see what he's dealing with underneath. That's where he's wrong. I see it. I see everything. I've been here every day, every night, every appointment, every school meeting. But there's a difference between support and blind loyalty. What he's doing isn't helping Liam. It's protecting him from reality. Liam talks about that crash like it happened yesterday. It didn't. It was 3 years ago. And if he can weaponize it when it suits him, he's more aware than Daniel wants to admit. And it's not just this incident. This is the 5th time in less than a year we've had a call from school about Liam upsetting other students. Once it was because he called a girl's drawing stupid and pointless. Another time he got caught telling a kid that people who still have mums don't understand anything. Then the spoon incident when he made it sound like I hit him. Every time there's a new excuse. He was triggered. He was tired. He didn't mean it like that. And every time, I'm the one who's supposed to fix it. Be patient. Be understanding. Be the adult. But I'm not allowed to be in charge when it matters. I'm not even allowed to have a say in discipline. Daniel says, "You're not his mom." But the second something needs doing, I'm mum enough for that. This PS5 mess. It was the moment I realized Daniel's line is wherever it's convenient. Braden's mum wasn't right to bring up his wife, but she wasn't wrong to be angry. Her son got humiliated in front of a classroom, and my boyfriend's reaction is to comfort the kid who did it and ignore the mother asking for accountability. And it's not just about Braden. It's about Liam learning that he can say or do anything, and the worst that'll happen is someone gives him a hug. The PS5 was a chance to show him actions have weight. I wasn't even suggesting they throw it away. Just don't let him be the first one to open it. Make him earn it back. Let him feel what it's like to lose something for once. Instead, Daniel bought him a new game the next day to cheer him up. So here I am. Sitting in a house I help run, raising kids I didn't make, getting blamed for wanting basic consequences after a year of doing everything. I told Daniel straight up, if you want me here just to cook and carry, say that. If you want a partner who gets no say that too. But I'm not going to stand here while you turn this kid into someone nobody can stand to be around. He thinks I'm being harsh. I think I've been too quiet for too long. He wants to protect Liam from every hard thing in the world. But all that's doing is guaranteeing Liam's going to crash hard the second someone finally tells him no. So yeah, I agreed with the mum. I think the PS5 should have gone to the other kid, or at least been put on hold. I think Liam needed to know what it feels like to screw up and not be shielded from it. And I'm tired of being the only adult in this house who's not afraid of making him upset. Daniel's barely talking to me now. Said I sided with strangers over his son. Maybe I did. Or maybe I just got tired of pretending everything Liam does is okay because life's been unfair to him. Life's been unfair to a lot of people. It doesn't mean we get to raise a kid who never hears the word no. So Reddit, aita for thinking my boyfriend's son deserved to be punished over what happened at school, even if it meant giving up the PS5. Comments. Comment 1. You're seriously sitting here talking about how hard you have it, while describing a 9-year-old who watched his mum die in a crash he was in. You treat his trauma like an inconvenience to your routine. You don't even try to hide your dislike for this kid, and frankly, it's gross. He's not a manipulator, he's a kid trying to stay afloat in a world that already ripped out the floor under him. You want him to feel consequences for finally getting a win over a kid who mocks him for not having a mum. And you thought giving the PS5 to the bully's family was a solid moral choice. What are you even talking about? This wasn't some unprovoked flex. This was a bullied kid finally having a moment to stand tall. Is it perfect? No. but punishing him for that is twisted. You sound resentful you're not the center of the household. That's not the kid's fault. If you don't want to be a stepmom, don't act like you're raising him while talking about him like he's your roommate who steals your charger. You're not helping. You're just projecting. Comment 2. You're acting like this kid having access to a PS5 is some privilege he doesn't deserve because he finally clapped back at a bully. A kid who spent years getting crap for not having a mom had one moment of pride. And you want to strip him of it to prove what? Exactly. That you're in charge? That grief has a limit. Giving the console to the bully's family. That's not a punishment. That's psychological warfare. No sane adult would suggest that unless they had some axe to grind, and you clearly do. You resent this kid. You talk about him like a walking inconvenience. Crying too much, talking too much, being too sensitive. Meanwhile, you signed up to live with a grieving family and are shocked it's not sunshine and peace and Pinterest dinners. It's fine to feel overwhelmed. It's not fine to turn a 9-year-old into your emotional punching bag. You don't have to stay. You don't even have to parent. But if you're going to stay, maybe stop treating this boy like he's your competition for his dad's attention. He lost his mom. He doesn't need to lose a damn PS5 too. Comment 3. This kid needs help, and not the kind you get from weekly therapy where no one makes you do the hard stuff. You can't raise a kid in grief mode for 3 straight years. At some point, someone has to say, enough. You're hurting people now. And honestly, the dad's using the trauma as a shield so he doesn't have to step up and actually parent. He thinks protecting him is love. It's not. It's neglect with better packaging. You're catching all the fallout and getting told to keep quiet. I'd be livid too. Also, what the hell kind of household runs on, you're not the mum logic, but still expects you to do mum level work? They want a live-in maid with a gag order. That's the job title. If you're not allowed to have a say, then stop doing the work. Full stop. That kid's future is going to be a mess if someone doesn't lay down a real line. And it's clear the dad's not going to be the one. Can't imagine living like that day in and day out. Comment 4. Can I just say, this whole situation feels like emotional trench warfare. You're stuck in a house with a kid who knows exactly what buttons to push, a man who refuses to parent past hugs, and a ghost of a wife who's clearly still running the show from the grave. And I don't mean that in a petty way. I mean your boyfriend is clinging so tight to the image of her that he can't admit the kid she left behind isn't doing great. This isn't about the PS5. This is about a boy who's been told he's broken so often. He's started using it as a pass for being SHTTY. Kids can be cruel. But when no one calls them on it, they become worse than cruel. They become entitled. And nobody's calling him on anything. Least of all his dad. You wanted the PS5 taken as a wake-up call. Instead, you're the one being punished for saying what no one else will. I don't know if I'd stay in that house. There's no room for your voice in it. Update. I don't agree with most of the advice I got. I read it all. I didn't ignore it. I just don't think people understood what living here was actually like, day after day, with Liam's moods running the house and Daniel shutting down anytime someone challenged him. A lot of commenters spoke like this was a single incident. It wasn't. This was months piling on each other, and the PS5 thing just tipped it over. After posting, the house felt tense in a way I can't really describe. Liam knew something was coming. He always does. He watches adults closely. He kept hovering, asking Daniel questions, and trying to insert himself into conversations. Daniel avoided me most of the weekend. He slept on the couch one night and said it was because his back hurt. I didn't push it. On Sunday evening, I told Daniel we needed to address what happened at school. Not later. Not after therapy. That night. I told him I wasn't comfortable watching Liam be rewarded, while another kid was sent home crying. Daniel said Liam already felt bad. I asked him how that mattered if nothing changed. So I made a decision. I told Liam he was done with the PS5 for the foreseeable future. Not hours. Not days. I unplugged it, put it back in the box, and stored it in the trunk of my car, so there was no argument about where it was. Liam cried immediately. Daniel told me to stop. I told him he could reverse it if he wanted, but that I wasn't backing down. Liam said he didn't do anything wrong. Said Braden deserved it. Said Braden started it. Same phrases he always uses when something goes sideways. I told him that wasn't how the world worked. That if he wanted to talk about what Braden had said to him before, we could do that later. But right now we were dealing with what he did. That's when I told Daniel I was taking Liam to Braden's house to apologize. Daniel objected. Said emotions were high. Said it could wait. I said it wouldn't. I said the longer this sat, the more Liam would rewrite it in his head, until he was the victim again. We went anyway. The drive was quiet, except for Liam crying and asking to go home. When we got there, Braden's mum answered the door already frustrated. Liam wouldn't look at her. When I told him to apologize, he shook his head and said he didn't mean it and that Braden lies. Braden's mum crossed her arms and said she wasn't interested in excuses. She said her son hadn't slept all weekend. I told Liam he could apologize now or lose more than the PS5. He said nothing. Braden's mum grounded said if he behaved that way with her, she could only imagine how he was elsewhere. Daniel finally spoke and said we were leaving. Liam walked back to the car without saying a word. On the way home, Daniel accused me of humiliating his son. I said maybe embarrassment was overdue. He said I crossed a line. I said the line keeps moving whenever it's Liam. We argued in the driveway while the kids waited inside. That argument followed us into the house. Things spiraled fast after that. Daniel accused me of hating Liam. I said I was tired of him. Tired of his constant complaints. Tired of therapy dictating every decision. Tired of being told that time had frozen for him and everyone else had to freeze too. I said the crash happened 3 years ago, and Liam couldn't live inside it forever. I said he had to learn how to exist without everything falling apart around him. Daniel told me I had no right to decide that. I told him he lost the right to say that when he let me raise his kids and then shut me out when I didn't agree with him. He said I wasn't raising them. That comment landed hard. That's when everything blew up. I said something I can't take back. I said I wished Liam had gone with his mom in that accident. The second it left my mouth, the house went silent. Maya started crying from the hallway. Liam froze. Daniel stared at me like he didn't recognize me. He didn't shout. He told me to get out. Not later. Not after calming down. Now. I tried to talk. I said I didn't mean it. I said I was overwhelmed and angry and didn't phrase it right. He walked into the bedroom and came back holding something in his hand. A ring box. He said he'd been planning to propose. He said he wanted to wait until things felt stable. Then he told me to forget about it. He said I was done in his house. He took the box, put it back in the drawer, and closed the door behind him. I packed what I could fit into my car while he stayed with the kids. He didn't look at me when I left. I've been staying with my sister since. Daniel hasn't contacted me, except once to tell me not to come back for my things without coordinating it through him. He blocked me on everything else. A mutual friend told me Liam has been having more therapy sessions, and that Daniel took time off work. I know people are going to latch onto what I said. I'm aware it was awful. I'm not proud of it. But I'm also not going to pretend it came from nowhere. I've been pushed out of every meaningful decision while being expected to absorb the chaos without reacting. I tried to force progress because nobody else would. Liam has been allowed to dominate every space because everyone is afraid of making him uncomfortable. I still don't think banning him from the PS5 was wrong. I still don't think apologizing to Braden's family was wrong. I don't think rewarding bad behavior helps anyone, no matter the backstory. And I don't think it's healthy that Daniel refuses to see how this is affecting Maya. She's quiet, she shrinks when Liam melts down, and everyone overlooks her because she doesn't cause problems. Someone has to notice that. Right now, Daniel wants nothing to do with me. He's made that clear. I don't know if this relationship is salvageable. And if it is, I don't know what role I'd even have. I don't want to be around Liam anymore, but I do care about Maya. I don't want her growing up in a house where one kid's pain swallows everything else whole. So I'm asking again, with everything out in the open. Aita for pushing for consequences, refusing to reward Liam after what he did, and trying to protect Maya from growing up in this environment, even if it costs me the relationship. Comments. Comment 1. You didn't want to be a mom. You wanted to be right. Every step in your update feels like you were setting Liam up to fail so you could say, see, he can't handle life. He's 9. He's not supposed to handle life. He's supposed to mess up and learn, ideally with some adult nearby who gives a damn. And even if he was being a brat, you dragged him to the mum of the kid who'd been mocking his dead mother, like that wasn't loaded to begin with. What exactly were you hoping he'd learn in that moment? How to stand there and take humiliation because adults demanded it. You say you were trying to teach him a lesson, but it sounds more like you were punishing him for being inconvenient. And Daniel, I don't blame him for shutting down after what you said. Imagine holding on to a ring, thinking you're building a future, then hearing the person you're with admit they wished your kid hadn't survived. You crossed a line you can't walk back from. I hope Maya's okay. And I hope someone actually in her corner steps up soon because it wasn't you. Comment 2. Honestly, the most disturbing part of your update wasn't the ring, the fight. Or even what you said, it's how you still think you're right. Like you're trying to do grief math to justify why your outburst wasn't that bad. You don't get to count up all the times Liam cried, complain about him getting comfort, and then act like dragging him to his bully's house was fair play. You weren't teaching him accountability, you were staging a punishment that would hurt enough to satisfy your anger. If you cared about Maya's well-being, you'd have protected her from that moment too. You say she cried when she heard you, maybe because that's the first time she realized the person she trusted was capable of saying something that ugly about her brother. Daniel didn't choose Liam over you, he chose decency. And let's not pretend this is about parenting anymore. You wanted authority without responsibility, credit without the work, and power without the patience. The second that kid stopped serving your need for validation, you turned on him. I'm glad he heard the truth before you got your hands on a ring and a permanent place in their lives. Comment 3. There's discipline. And then there's cruelty dressed up as tough love. You pushed that boy away from the second he stopped fitting into your idea of how grief should work. All that talk about moving on and learning things like you're coaching a grown man through a divorce instead of a 9-year-old trying to survive every day without the person who used to tuck him in. You thought dragging him to the bully's house would teach him humility, but it was just a stage for you to show everyone you were the adult in charge. You needed it to be public so your authority felt real. You wanted him small. Then you made him invisible with a single sentence. Wish you'd gone with your mom. There's no walking that back. That's a scar. Daniel saw it. So did Maya. Maybe you were trying to protect her, but don't pretend she's the only kid who needed help. You were in over your head, and instead of asking for help, you aimed your resentment at a grieving boy. What happened next was Daniel choosing to protect his son from someone who stopped seeing him as a kid. Update. I didn't think things could get worse after I left, but I was wrong. Being cut out completely sent me into a headspace I'm not proud of, and instead of backing off, I kept trying to prove that I wasn't the monster everyone suddenly decided I was. After I moved in with my sister, the silence hit harder than I expected. No messages. No updates about the kids. No chance to explain myself without being shut down. I kept replaying that night in my head, not just what I said, but everything leading up to it. The months of being ignored, of having my input dismissed unless it involved cooking, cleaning, or pickups. I convinced myself that Daniel threw me out because I forced him to see things he didn't want to face. That thought stuck. So I started talking. At first, it was just to mutual friends. I framed it as concern. I said Liam's behavior had been getting worse, and that Daniel was too emotionally tangled up to see it clearly. I used phrases like red flags and warning signs. I told them I was scared for Maya growing up in that environment. I didn't say outright that Liam was dangerous, but I let people fill in the blanks. A few nodded along. A few went quiet. I took the quiet as agreement. Then I reached out to Daniel's sister. I hadn't spoken to her since the breakup, but I messaged her anyway. I said I was worried about Daniel and the kids. I said Liam was spiraling and Daniel was enabling it out of guilt. I mentioned the PS5 incident, the school calls, and the way Daniel shut down whenever anyone challenged him. I expected concern. Instead, she told me to stop contacting her family and said Daniel had already explained everything. That conversation didn't go the way I wanted, and it sent me further into a corner. Around that time, I started drafting things. Posts. Notes. I wanted people to understand my side without being interrupted or judged. I didn't publish them right away, but writing made me feel justified. I wasn't cruel, I told myself. I was practical. Someone had to be. I also couldn't stop thinking about the school, about how much they catered to Liam. So I applied for a position there. I told myself it was about stability and income, but that wasn't the full truth. I wanted to see how things actually worked there. I wanted to know if they really were reinforcing his behavior. The interview started normally. The atmosphere shifted the moment they asked why I left my last living situation. When I mentioned Daniel's name, one of them recognized it. The rest of the interview felt short. I got a rejection email the next day, very polite, very final. That only fed into my belief that people were lining up against me without hearing the full picture. A week later, I posted an anonymous piece online. It wasn't Reddit. It was a parenting forum. I titled it something neutral about being shut out of parenting after stepping up. I described the household, the grief, the way one child took up all the space while the other faded into the background. I didn't use names, but anyone close enough could guess. The responses were mixed. Some sympathized. Others tore into me. I focused on the ones who agreed. Daniel must have seen it. I don't know how, but not long after, I got my first direct message from him since I left. It wasn't emotional. It was short. He told me to stop speaking about his family publicly. He said if I didn't, he'd take steps to make sure I couldn't contact them again. I replied that I was entitled to tell my story. He didn't respond. I kept going. I left a review for Liam's therapist. I said the sessions enabled bad behavior and ignored the adults trying to introduce discipline. I didn't name Liam, but again, the details were obvious. 2 days later, the clinic contacted Daniel. I know because my sister overheard his name mentioned when she ran into a mutual acquaintance. That same week, Maya's birthday came up. I saw photos from a friend's social media. Balloons. A small indoor play place. I bought a gift. Something thoughtful. Something just for her. I drove there, not planning to cause a scene, just hoping to hand it off. I didn't make it inside. Daniel was outside when I arrived. He blocked my path and told me to leave. His voice was low and firm. He said Maya wouldn't benefit from seeing me. I tried to give him the gift anyway. He said no and turned his back. I sat in my car and cried until the party ended. Then drove home with the present still wrapped. That should have been the point where I stopped. Instead, I started rewriting the story even more. I told people Daniel had used me. That he lent on me when things were hard and discarded me when I stopped agreeing with everything he did. I said he made me feel unsafe in my own home. I used words like emotionally aggressive. I told myself I wasn't lying. I was just framing it differently. I even floated the idea, briefly, that I might be pregnant. I didn't say it publicly, but I told one mutual friend who I knew would pass it on. I wanted Daniel to reach out. He didn't. The rumor died fast, and I felt ridiculous afterwards. But at the time it felt like the only way to be heard. Then the letter came. It was formal. Legal. Daniel had filed for a restraining order. Not just for himself, but for the kids. The document listed everything. The school application. The therapist review. The posts. The birthday incident. The messages to his family. It painted a picture of someone unable to let go. Reading it made my stomach drop. I showed up to the hearing convinced I could explain. That a judge would see I wasn't a threat. Daniel didn't look at me once. The judge granted a temporary order and scheduled a longer-term one. Until then, I wasn't allowed to contact Daniel or the kids directly or indirectly. Walking out of that courtroom felt unreal. Now I'm sitting in my sister's spare room with boxes I never unpacked. The ring Daniel showed me keeps replaying in my head. How close I was to being part of that family permanently. How fast it unraveled. I still believe Liam needed to be challenged instead of constantly soothed. I still believe Maya deserves someone looking out for her. But I can't deny how far this went, or that my need to be right pushed everything into a place it can't come back from. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if I crossed lines that can't be uncrossed, or if I was just the only one willing to say things out loud. All I know is that I've been shut out completely, branded as a problem, and left holding my version of the truth with nowhere to put it. So I'm asking again, even if people don't like the answer. Aita for continuing to speak up and act when I believe Daniel was failing his kids, even if it ended with a restraining order against me. Comments. Comment 1. You turned parenting into performance and got pissed when no one clapped. Dragging a kid to his bully's house, reviewing his therapist, showing up at his school like some authority figure, it's so far beyond discipline. You didn't want to guide him. You wanted to prove he was broken. And the worst part is, I don't even think you hate him. I think you hated the version of yourself you saw through him, someone uncertain, messy, and emotionally raw. So instead of facing that, you punished him for reflecting it. And Maya? You used her silence like a prop. You saw her as an audience, not a child who just watched someone she trusted implode in front of her. You lost more than a relationship. You lost who you were pretending to be. Comment 2. Everything you did after getting kicked out just confirmed you never saw that family as anything but a stage for your own self-image. You wanted to be seen as the one who stepped up and told hard truths. But what you actually did was bulldoze your way through people's trauma like you were cleaning a messy room. Let's be honest, Liam didn't ruin your life. He didn't even stand a chance. You resented the fact that a 9-year-old grieving boy wasn't grateful enough, quiet enough, or easy enough to make you feel like the hero. And Maya, you clung to her because she gave you less pushback. You weren't protecting her. You were clinging to the only one who didn't reflect your own failures back at you. Then you started targeting Daniel's support system, his therapist, the school, and his family. You tried to poison the well when you weren't allowed back in. The restraining order was overdue. You crossed every line, then played victim when it blew up in your face. No one needed saving except your ego. What you wanted wasn't peace. It was praise. And when you didn't get it, you lit the bridge and called it justice. Comment 3. You are obsessed with proving you mattered more than a dead woman. Every step of this story reads like someone trying to erase grief that made them uncomfortable. The photos, the therapy, the tears, all of it needed to go. Or else you couldn't breathe in that house. So you picked the weaker target. Liam wasn't easy. He had pain that showed. He interrupted your peace. So you pushed him to move on. Not because it would help him, but because his sadness made you feel like an outsider. The second you said he should have died too, it was over. That was the truth hiding under all the discipline talk. And when the door closed, you didn't reflect. You doubled down. You went after his therapist and his school, and even tried to crash a birthday party. You used Meyer as a reason to insert yourself again. But what you really wanted was a chance to rewrite the narrative. You wanted to be seen as the wounded one, the one left behind. But it's not your story. It never was. Daniel protected his kid from someone who only felt powerful when the broken kid stayed broken. Second story. My entitled parents hit my child as discipline during our very first meeting. The whole family defended them and said it was necessary. So I went NC with them. I created this account just to talk about this, because it seems all my family, except my wife, are on their side. For context, I live abroad, and this is only the second time my family has met my daughter. My wife 28F and I 28M flew down for the holidays, as well as an extended vacation, so my daughter 3F could get to see my home country Brazil and have a fun, different experience. We spent New Year's at my parents' with my extended family. Everything seemed to be going well until, on the 3rd, my wife and I left the house to run some errands and left my daughter alone with my parents. My daughter is a very smart girl. She loves talking, and she's sweet but opinionated. And we like to encourage that. We want her to know that her voice and thoughts matter, and we are there to listen. My parents, however, seemed to disagree. While we were out, my mom called me, telling me that my daughter was being disrespectful. I asked her what she was doing, and she told me that she was arguing about the cartoon they'd picked for her to watch, and wanted to watch something else they didn't know. And I understand we don't always have to give kids what they want. But I don't see the harm in that, especially because I don't exactly trust whatever they chose for her due to certain ideological differences we have. So I sent her a link to a YouTube series she likes to watch and asked her to put that on instead, and told her that Dad and Mum would be back soon to talk to her. Next, my mum told me she had already taken care of it. I was confused as to what that meant, and she followed to say that she had spanked her to teach her to not argue. Needless to say, I was furious. I hung up, told my wife, and we immediately dropped everything and drove back. We do not do spanking. We have never and never will. As someone who was spanked a lot for the most unnecessary and stupid reasons, I understand it does not work and only harms the child. And yes, I had mentioned it to my parents. We had a pretty ugly argument when we arrived, but I kept my position clear. They did not have the right to do that, and I wouldn't be taking it lightly. My parents are very strict in their ways, and they refuse to apologize or even acknowledge that what they did was wrong, if not for the spanking, for doing it without my permission. Long story short, we packed the same day and left. I called the hotel for the next city we were visiting and booked a room earlier. It was about a week before we were planning to leave. I made it very clear to my parents, I don't want to hear any more excuses. I sent them some articles on parenting and child abuse, and told them I wouldn't be talking to them, or allowing them to talk to or see my daughter again, until they've read those and contacted me to apologize and acknowledge that what they did was horrible and wrong. Fast forward to now, it's been over 2 weeks, and all I've heard from them are enraged complaints about how they know what they were doing, because they did it to me, and I turned out okay, so it must work, and about how I'm being ridiculous and unfair, because they were only trying to help, and they don't get to see my daughter often since I live abroad. I've received calls from my sister, who is a lot like them, defending them, from my sister's husband, from his father, from 2 of my uncles, my father's brothers, and even from some of my cousins. To put it shortly, what everyone is saying is that I should forgive them and forget about it, because they had good intentions, and they don't get to see my daughter often, so I'm being unfair. We had plans to spend a few more days with my parents in early February before our flight home, but I canceled it. I still don't think I'm wrong, but I can partly see their reasoning behind the they don't get to see her often point, though I'm still very much not inclined to yield. Aita. Comments. Comment 1. Your child, your rules. And BTW, they haven't seen this child since she was born, and their idea of bonding with the kid they've never really met before is to hit her. Sounds like a dumb way to develop a relationship with a toddler. OP, unfortunately. They don't know much about developing healthy relationships. Or they believe they have authority over her, which I'm trying to make clear they don't. Comment 2. What's their problem? They don't see her often, so they think they can hit her. Besides, they haven't offered a single apology. They're completely convinced they're in the right, so they'll do it again. And they've enlisted the whole family behind them. A family whose capacity for self-reflection is clearly lower than the ick of a mussel in marinara sauce. You're not in the wrong. OP. I think they don't want to apologize because that's how they raised me. And if they do apologize and admit they were wrong, it won't be just for this instance, but for the way they acted for decades before this. They're too proud for that. The rest of my family is very much like that too. Comment 3. Well then, they are the ones who are too proud to be grandparents. I grew up with spanking, and yeah, I turned out fine. But that doesn't mean I think it was okay. And it resonates deeply. I don't want that for my kid. Comment 4. I grew up with spanking and physical punishments. I would say I am relatively okay, but it took me some years of therapy to get here. I became scared of my parents, scared of disappointing them, and scared of the degradation and pain of the physical punishments. No child should have to feel that way about their family. Comment 5. Go NC with all of them. Good riddance. OP. I've been talking to my wife about this. We were staying with them mostly to humor them, if I'm being fully honest. We hadn't seen them since our daughter was a newborn, and they had been asking incessantly for us to visit. It wasn't even the main objective of our trip. I think it might be cutting our losses if we do. Comment 6. They hit your kid. That would be relationship ending for me. Comment 7. We don't get to see your daughter often, so we decided to hit her on one of the few opportunities we do have. WTF. Comment 8. How did your daughter react? OP. She was crying when we arrived, and my wife stayed with her while I talked with my parents. I think she was a little confused when we left abruptly, but she loves car rides, so she lit up fairly quickly. We told her Granny did something bad, and it wouldn't happen again. To be honest, I wasn't sure what to tell her, and I don't know if that was enough. But she's been enjoying the vacation, and we're making sure she has a great time. Update. This post got a lot more attention than I was expecting. I showed it to my wife, and we decided to block everyone who has been texting us about the situation. We'll enjoy the rest of our vacation in peace. Once we're back home, I'm going to call my parents and explain to them one last time why what they did is unacceptable. I will not be allowing them to be alone with my daughter ever again, and unless I can see for sure that they've learned and changed, they will not be seeing her again at all. I'll keep them muted and contact them only if something urgent happens in the family. I've also seen some comments debating spanking kids, and I believe this is a discussion we as humans shouldn't even be having anymore. Spanking or any kind of physical punishment is abuse, and there's never any excuse to resort to violence. If a child is too young to reason with, they won't understand why you're hitting them. If they are old enough to reason with, then reason with them. Comments. Commenter. I am on your side in this, but I think you need to reframe what you expect from your parents. I do think they need to apologize, but you are not going to convince them that spanking is wrong. Right now they are dug way down in on this, and it's stopping you from hearing each other. You are allowed to feel that spanking is wrong. They are allowed to feel that spanking is right. I hate this with a passion, but they are going to believe what they want to believe. You do not have to agree. The only thing they have to agree to is that it is not their job to spank your child ever, no matter what. Don't expect them to read articles and do a whole thesis about why you're right. Boil it down to the very basic understanding that as a parent, it is your prerogative to correct your child's behavior as you see fit. All you need to have your parents agree to is that they may not spank your child again. Right now, you are on a toxic loop of I am right, no, I am right, over and over. You are right. But you can't bully someone into changing their mindset. So focus on what's important. It's not important for your parents to agree that spanking is abusive. It is important for them to agree that it is not their place to spank, and that they won't spank again in the future. Don't engage in any other discussion. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.